Thank you all for coming. Basically, the premise of the talk is a little bit about what are ICOs, or a broader superset, token-generating events. I think that's the latest parlance that we're pushing out of Switzerland. The different kinds of them, and what are kind of some of the regulatory problems and moral hazards and other things, and maybe my opinion on where the hell it's all going. So what is a token-generating event? We got three different types. Got the ICO. That's what everybody's doing right now. $1.3 billion raised so far. Got people copy and pasting code, changing a name, putting a new name in, raising 200 million, not to name any ventures or anything like that. Other people making great claims, and that's fun, and we'll get to that in a bit. And then you have two other forms. One is called proof of burn. Anybody know what proof of burn is? Show of hands. Yeah, a few of the oldies in the space. And what was the first proof of burn? You got it, right? And what is proof of burn? It's an upgrade. You take a token, you destroy the token, and you get a new token. It's a really interesting device, and actually it doesn't seem to pass the Howey test in my view. Then you had a share drop. Anybody know what a share drop or an airdrop is? You ever hear this term before? Show of hands? A couple of people. So anybody know about Ethereum and Ethereum Classic? What happened there? We took Ethereum and then took the UTXO, copied it over, and now we have two Ethereums, Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. It's a share drop. So if you had one Ether, you have an Ether Classic as well. Now the rational actor would say, well, that's impossible because the minute you do it, the new coin will die because everybody just makes infinite profit, right? As soon as you get it, it's free money. You should sell it till it goes to zero. But ETC is actually over $1 billion. It's doing quite well. So share drops actually can result in a stable ecosystem with lots of money. So these are kind of the three vehicles. And I've been in the space long enough to actually witness all of them be used to various degrees of success. The first ICO I'm aware of was Mastercoin. There may have been some decentralized crowdfunding on Bitcoin talk prior to that, but Mastercoin was like the first one to do an Exodus address and all this stuff. J.R. Willett had the Bitcoins on his laptop or desktop, and they rushed and created some Delaware company to actually do a legal structure, and they raised like $500,000. And at the time, they were proud, man. They were like, wow. 1 month, we raised $500,000 off of Bitcoin talk. Oh my God, this is so cool. Then later on, Dan Larimer, working with some guys, did Angel Shares, and they raised like $4 million. And everybody's like, whoa, this is so cool. Then the big daddy was Ethereum. Everybody remember that one? It was $18 million. My God, how are they ever going to spend all that money? Now you do an ICO today, it's like $18 million. Oh God, how did it fail? You know, what did you guys do wrong in your marketing or something? So the point is that we're going up like an order of magnitude, basically every time, every event. And that's a good indication that there's probably going to be a bubble, and there's probably going to be a collapse. The other thing is that we're no longer talking about what is the technology, what is the purpose, do you have a right to exist, a reason to exist, do you want to change the world, what are you going to do with the money? It's all about ROI. That's another indication that there's a bubble. You see people who got really lucky with Ethereum or really lucky with Bitcoin and it got 100x. They say, well, this new token, yeah, people are going to, like bats. Yeah, you know, everybody's going to be after that shit. Let's put in some money, we'll get a 10x, right? And so you're actually taking lucky people and they're doubling down to be lucky again. So I believe what we're in for is going to be some form of a bubble, and the bubble is going to collapse. And then that'll draw in the regulators. So that's kind of the premise of the talk today, is to have a little bit of a discussion about what are some of the moral hazards that I've seen or I think in the space, and also what would a regulatory event look like, in my opinion, and what would the aftermath be if such a thing occurred. So it's probably a glum, morbid speech, but I get to tell it because y'all came. So anyway, what are some of the moral hazards? Well, first off, we're not doing KYC and AML in a lot of these offerings. What is KYC and AML? Anybody run an exchange? I know you do. Okay, so basically, let's say John. You say you're John O'Connor, right? Okay, you say that. But I don't know that unless you provide some evidence to that. Now, why would I want that? Well, I know you're a unique human being. That's the first thing. So let's say we have a crowd sale and 5,000 people participate and all send funds to this Exodus address. How many are real people and how many are just transactions? The only way you can know that for certain is with KYC and AML. You have to do compliance, or else it could be one guy who created 5,000 transactions and sent it to the Exodus address. Now, why would you do that? Any ideas? Well, what if you are an insider? Where's the money going? To yourself. And you're creating coins out of thin air doing this. And then there's a hype cycle. So when it goes way up, you sell the new coins you've created, and you make a 5x or 10x in the money that you just put in. And it's anonymous, right? Nobody knows, nobody sees it. You say, I don't know who these people are. They're people over the internet. Furthermore, there are foundations that are doing these events. And what do legal entities have? They have bank accounts. And so what does a banker have to do? Anybody in banking here? Anybody ever been in banking here? Show of hands. Have the courage? Okay. So this one guy over there who's very courageous, and the ones who aren't courageous, what do they have to do when you open an account? They do KYC and AML. And they also have this thing called origin of funds, right? So when you have an account, like a business that's brand new, and they have $10 million that came out of damn nowhere, and you call them into the office and you say, hey guys, where'd you get this $10 million from? What do they say? Oh yeah, it's so cool. We did this crowd sale. We got it from all these people over the internet. We don't know where they're at. Could be in Iran. Who cares? It's so awesome, man. It's great. Is that like a high-risk bank account or is that a low-risk bank account, right? So that's a problem. Then you have a litany of other moral hazards, like how do you spend $200 million? I run a company. We operate in 10 countries. We have 100 people. We have 3 research partnerships, one at Edinburgh, one at Tokyo Tech, one at Athens. And I would not be able to spend this much money. It would be so devastating to us as a company. First, think about wages. You have a guy come on board and say, I ask him, how much do you want to be paid per month? He says, $25,000 a month, because he knows you have $200 million, right? There's no, I don't have the money to pay you. There's none of this discussion, because everybody publicly knows you have this much value in your back pocket. Furthermore, you start thinking, well, I can take business class. Well, I can do 5-star hotel. I earned it. I got all this capital. And lo and behold, your expenses go way up. You don't work any harder. Your people don't work any harder. In fact, they're actually thinking more about the money than the project or the product. And so you actually execute slower. Jawbone is a great example of that. If you get overfunded, it's just as bad as being underfunded. And this is a phenomenon that I think a lot of these ICOs are going to be facing soon enough. And the other thing is that your investors, the people who buy these tokens, they have an expectation of a return. How many people gave money to an ICO and said, I don't care what they do with the money. I don't care if the token goes up. It's fine. I love the mission and the vision and the principle. If it's your favorite charity, maybe. But for a lot of these guys, they're like, oh, that's a good investment. That's going to be 5x. They got some good people. So you raised $200 million. Now your guys want $1 billion capitalization. And they want you to do it in 2 years or less. How do you do that? Especially if the market's in a bubble and the bubble collapses. I think Bancor raised 150 or they're at 60 now. What if it goes to 10? Are you going to have happy people who are all copacetic and they're feeling great about life? No. So the problem is that the Securities Exchange Commission, which is kind of the big watchdog for a lot of this stuff, is in between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, they say, we don't want to stifle innovation. We want to allow this model to grow and persist. But on the other hand, we're starting to see a moral hazard. It's going up by an order of magnitude every generation. You have obvious structuring schemes where people go and hide in Switzerland or somewhere else. They operate in America, so their substance is in America, but their form is in Switzerland, so there's kind of a tax evasion component to that. And they have no moral or ethical obligation, in their view, to the buyers. If you read the terms of sale of a lot of these ICOs, they say things like, you have no rights, it's a donation. If we go spend the money on our favorite extracurricular activities, it's just as good as writing code. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And there's no consumer protection. Why? Because they didn't do KYC and AML. So how do you know how to help the people? How do you know how to assist them? If Bob says, I bought your ICO, and he comes to you 6 months, a year later, and he says, well, I lost my credentials. You can't go check his passport and say, yeah, you match our records. You don't know who Bob is. So you can't issue a new certificate. You can't use a backup recovery archive. You can't do any of this stuff. You just say, Bob, you've lost everything. So sorry. So you get a situation where people are irrational. You have massive amounts of money. You have a lot of corporate malfeasance. You have a lot of potential insider trading, a lot of board transitivity, and no regard whatsoever to consumer protection. This is the environment our space is currently in, whether we want to admit it or not. So what will happen? Well, bubbles break. They always do. And when they break, all these ventures get defunded. Then that's a great time for the SEC to come in, a great time for class action lawsuits. And they have 7 years to do it, called statutes of limitation. They can still go after the Mastercoin guys if they want to. And then every one of these ICO guys has to argue why they don't pass the Howey test. How many of them got a legal opinion on that? Not, I talked to a lawyer and the lawyer said, yeah, it's probably not. Now there's something like serious, like a more likely than not opinion, where they had to do research and provide an argument and the law firm stands behind it. Probably not many. How many got a no action letter from the SEC? None. So no one's protected if they've sold into the United States. And then you have some people get clever who are like, well, I didn't sell into the United States, wink, wink. But if you don't do KYC AML, how do you know? Yeah, there's already decisions that the SEC's made that you have to do that to blacklist them. And if you don't, well, you probably did. There was a certain venture that shall remain nameless that bragged about how they didn't sell into the United States. And then right on Times Square's billboard, their logo's there. And there's trucks driving through Manhattan with their logo on the side. And let me get this straight, that's not a roadshow. That's not advertising to US purchasers who will use VPNs or other things to evade and buy in. Why would you market if you're not selling into this jurisdiction? So there's a lot of precedent. Now, if they do get involved, what happens? Well, you get double whammied. First off, if a token is a security, you can't sell it on an exchange. Why is that exchange? Because you need broker-dealer, right? You need special licenses to sell securities. You can't list normal instruments like that. Okay, so we'll see tokens get delisted from American exchanges and probably international exchanges as well as part of risk mitigation. Furthermore, the banks, they're going to say, these are too risky, these clients. They'll drop the accounts. Okay, so they lose their bank accounts, and they get delisted from exchanges, and the token value goes to the toilet, and then the token buyers feel defrauded and want their money back. What do? Class action lawsuit. That's probably, in my view, the most worst case scenario that we're looking at in this space. Maybe it'll be less draconian, but it's probably going to happen. And what's the aftermath of that going to be? Well, in my view, the SEC will have to create a standard. They'll issue an administrative ruling and say something like, well, this is how you have to register. You have to do KYC and AML. You have to have some consumer protections. And they'll create some framework. They'll pick somebody really egregious. They'll throw the book at them to make an example. And then for the rest of the people, they'll give them a fine or say you have to register or do something like that. And the industry will move on. That's how this usually works. And that's how it's always worked. Now, will this stop ICOs? No, because we have other mechanisms like proof of burn, share drops. People are outside the United States legitimately. Like if you have an organization in South Korea or China, you just sell to people in China, there's no US participation, there's no jurisdiction there. It's very difficult to have that. So those will continue. And that's over 6 billion people. So I think ICOs are here to stay. I think ICOs are going to continue growing. I think we're going to have more and more and more rational exuberance. And then eventually I think it will burst. It'll contract the market a little bit. The strong will survive. A lot of the weak will get flooded out. And if you're in a developed jurisdiction like countries in Western Europe or the United States, my belief is that there'll be regulation for these things. The regulation will probably be kind of hybrid, something like the Jobs Act, something where it's somewhat easy to comply, but you'll have to have a prospectus and some notion of registration and some notion of compliance. And as for the rest of the world, they'll continue like online gaming and gambling, running in a kind of a gray area market and doing gray area things. So that's my view on ICOs. It's a very pessimistic one, but I think it's a pragmatic one, and I think it's a realistic one in a sense. This said, I do believe there's a lot of room for innovation in this space. And I do believe if you're an entrepreneur and you want to capitalize your company, there are a lot of really clever ways you can still do it. Like proof of burn is legitimately a great option for a lot of people. Let's say you have a great new privacy coin, for example, and you think yours is legitimately better than Monero or Zcash or any of these other guys. Okay, create an endowment and do a proof of burn. Have people destroy their token. It creates a distribution, it creates a value. They've upgraded their token, but you don't take anybody's money. And you only get paid if the token's actually worth something. So you're actually directly aligned with the people that you're working for, and you're betting on the technology, its adoption, and its growth over a period of time. That seems to be a far more sensible model. Okay, share drops are also interesting. That's where you have philosophical differences. Bitcoin may experience this. If the segregated witness debate doesn't pan out the way that we want it to, you're going to have one philosophy here, and you're going to have another philosophy here. And what does that mean? We're cloning the token. We now have 2 of these tokens or more, just like Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. And the communities diverge. And because there's real people there, and there's real trading and real mining, and we split the community, we've actually now created completely different ecosystems. And those will have real value. So I think that those are healthy because they actually allow you to take an unstable community that can't advance and split up. Mom and dad split up, they got a divorce. They can now go get remarried and have a better life. And there's maybe a lot of business models, like maybe you want to grab someone's community, like maybe you want to compete with EOS, and you think the Steam guys and the BitShare guys got screwed because they didn't get any distribution. You can just take the ownership, create a share drop, and fork EOS. Maybe you'll do something there. This has actually been tried with some projects to some degree of success. So I think there's a lot of innovation here that doesn't necessarily involve an ICO. The last point I'll make is that there's a moral obligation when you take other people's money. I don't like it when people say, give me money and I don't have to do anything. It's just insane to me. You take someone's money, you got to deliver something. You have to create value, real value, or do your best. You have to wake up every day and say, well, my job is to make sure these guys have a good outcome. That's the key. And I think that that's the mindset we need to return to in this space. Because the reality is that that's how Bitcoin got created. Nobody was thinking about money in the beginning days of Bitcoin because it wasn't worth anything. If you were a core developer, it's because you were philosophically aligned with it. You believed in it. And it turned out that all the people who got in early, if they stayed in, got fabulously wealthy. But that's an after effect of a philosophy and a passion. And that's why I entered the space. It's why I'm here. It's why IOHK exists. We do a lot of first principles research. We do a lot of Haskell development. It's not easy, but we do it because we love it and we're really excited about it. And we think we can do great things as a company. And if we are successful, we're a company, we're for profit, we'll do well. But my success is not measured in how much money we make. It's measured in the things that we do, in the products we build, in the protocols that we enable, and their impact that they have. If you change the world, you're going to get rich, either in experience or in money. So that's my brief, cynical, sleep-deprived, Greek elevator falling presentation on ICOs, and I'd love to have your questions because I assume that we're going to get at least one or two good ones. Thank you.